The room was quiet except for the soft hum of the holographic display. Admiral Catherine Blake stood with her hands behind her back, staring at the image floating in the air. It showed nothing but empty space and tiny pieces of metal drifting in the darkness. 3 days ago, that empty space had been home to the colony ship New Horizon and 50,000 human souls. Catherine's face showed no emotion, but her knuckles were white where her hands gripped each other. Around the long table sat the most important people in Earth's government. Director Paul Morrison shifted in his chair, his usually neat hair messy from running his hands through it. General Lisa Carter sat perfectly straight, her military training keeping her still even though her eyes burned with anger. Ambassador Ronald Pierce looked tired, older than his 60 years. At the far end of the table sat 2 aliens. Ambassador Vexthul from the Zephyrian Empire looked like a giant insect with too many arms and cold black eyes. His skin was the color of old copper, and when he spoke, his voice sounded like grinding metal. Next to him sat Quintar from the Altarian Confederacy, tall and thin with pale blue skin and large silver eyes that never seemed to blink. The Galactic Council expresses its regret for this unfortunate incident, Quintar said in his soft, musical voice. We understand that your species grieves differently than others. We will give you time to process this loss. Vexthul's many arms moved in what might have been a shrug. The Empire maintains that the New Horizon entered restricted space without permission. Our response was within galactic law. Catherine finally turned around. Her brown eyes were calm, but something about them made even General Carter sit back in her chair. 50,000 people, Catherine said quietly. Families, children, scientists and farmers and teachers, people who just wanted to find a new home among the stars. Regrettable, Vexthul said, his voice flat. But they should have followed proper procedures. They were refugees, Director Morrison said, his voice shaking. Their homeworld was dying. They sent distress signals for months before they left. Not our concern, the Zephyrian replied. Catherine walked slowly around the table. Her boots made soft clicking sounds on the metal floor. Tell me something, Ambassador Vexthul. How does your species mourn its dead? The alien's head tilted, slightly. We do not dwell on the past, the dead are dead, we focus on the living. And your species, Quintar? The tall alien's silver eyes seemed to glow. We sing songs of memory for 7 days, then we let the dead rest in peace. Grief that lasts too long is considered unhealthy. Catherine nodded slowly. I see. And you both expect humans to do the same. Mourn quietly for a few days, maybe a few weeks, then move on. Forget about the 50,000 people who died because they were in the wrong place at the wrong time. It would be the wise course, Quintar said gently. Anger and revenge only lead to more suffering. Catherine stopped walking and placed her hands flat on the table. You know what the funny thing is? Every species in the galaxy has studied us. You know our history, our wars, our achievements. You know we're young and small and not very important in the grand scheme of things. But there's one thing you never bothered to learn about us. What is that? Vexthul asked, sounding bored. How we really grieve. Catherine pressed a button on the table and the door slid open. Thank you both for coming. Your condolences are noted. Ambassador Pierce will escort you to your ships. The 2 aliens looked surprised. Most species would spend hours talking, making demands, asking for justice or compensation. But Catherine was dismissing them like they were unimportant visitors. That is all? Quintar asked. That's all, Catherine said. Earth has no further business with either of your governments at this time. Ambassador Pierce stood up, his diplomatic training taking over. If you'll follow me, gentlemen. After the aliens left, the room stayed quiet for a long moment. Then Director Morrison spoke. Catherine, what are you planning? She turned to look at the holographic display again. The pieces of the New Horizon were still drifting in the darkness, slowly spreading apart. In a few years, they would be scattered across light years of space, but Catherine would remember exactly where each piece had been. They think they know us, she said softly. They think we're like them. They think we'll cry for a few days and then forget. She turned back to the table. Dr. Rodriguez, how long have you been studying alien psychology? Dr. Elena Rodriguez, who had been sitting quietly in the corner, looked up from her tablet. 15 years, Admiral. And what did you learn about how different species handle loss? Elena cleared her throat. Most species have short grief periods. They mourn intensely for a brief time, then move on. It's actually quite healthy from a psychological standpoint. Dwelling on loss for too long can damage a society. But humans are different, Catherine said. Very different. Human grief doesn't follow the same pattern. We don't just mourn and forget. We remember. We carry our dead with us, sometimes for generations. Catherine nodded. That's right. We build monuments to people who died thousands of years ago. We tell stories about them. We name our children after them. We never let them go. General Carter leaned forward. What does that have to do with our current situation? Catherine's smile was cold and sharp. Everything. They think our grief makes us weak. They think we'll curl up and hide and lick our wounds like some injured animal. They've watched other species do exactly that for millions of years. She walked to the window that looked out over Earth's capital city. Millions of lights twinkled in the darkness, each one representing human lives, human dreams, human hopes. But they made one mistake, Catherine continued. They assumed we were like everyone else. They assumed human grief was the same as alien grief. They assumed we would mourn quietly and then move on. Director Morrison's voice was barely a whisper. What are you saying, Catherine? She turned back to face the room and her eyes were burning now. I'm saying they're about to learn what human grief really looks like. They're about to learn that when humans lose someone we love, we don't just cry and forget. We remember. We honor. We carry that pain with us until we can do something about it. The room was completely silent now. Even the soft hum of the holographic display seemed to have stopped. 50,000 people, Catherine said again. 50,000 names. I will never forget. 50,000 reasons why the sky is about to change. She pressed another button on the table and a new hologram appeared. This one showed star charts, ship positions, and technical specifications that made General Carter's eyes widen. Operation Skyfall begins now, Catherine said. They wanted to see how humans mourn. They're about to get a very educational experience. 3 months had passed since the New Horizon died in the cold darkness of space. The galaxy watched Earth with the lazy interest of a cat watching a wounded mouse. Every alien government expected the same thing they had seen 100 times before. Humans would be sad for a while, then they would pull back from galactic politics. They would become quiet and weak, just like every other species did after a big loss. The Zephyrian Empire was already making plans to expand into human territory. Their intelligence reports showed normal human activities. Ships moved on regular patrol routes. Trade continued as usual. There were no angry messages from Earth, no threats of war, no demands for justice. The humans were acting exactly like the aliens expected them to act. Commander Stephen Walsh sat in his captain's chair on the bridge of the Earth defense ship Retribution. His ship was patrolling the outer edge of human space, far from any important planets or trade routes. It was boring work, the kind of job that made younger officers complain about wasting their careers. But Stephen was not bored. He had been waiting for 3 months and today felt different. The sealed orders in his safe had been calling to him like a whisper in the dark. Admiral Blake herself had told him to open them only when he received a specific signal. His communications officer, Lieutenant Commander Maria Santos, looked up from her station. Sir, we're getting something strange on the emergency frequency. What kind of strange? It's just numbers, sir, a sequence repeating over and over. But it's using our highest security codes. Stephen felt his heart start beating faster. Put it on speaker. The bridge filled with the sound of numbers being read in a calm computer-generated voice.
7749218-8357749218-835. Maria frowned at her console. Sir, those numbers match the code sequence from your sealed orders. Stephen was already moving toward his ready room. You have the bridge, Commander, and Maria.
Whatever happens in the next few minutes, remember that we've been preparing for this since the day the New Horizon died. In his private office, Stephen opened the safe with hands that were not quite steady. The sealed packet felt heavier than it should have. When he broke the seal and read the first line, he had to sit down. Operation Skyfall, Phase 1. Authorization, The Sky Remembers. Stephen read the orders 3 times before he fully understood what Admiral Blake was asking him to do. Then he understood why his hands were shaking. It was not fear, it was excitement. It was the feeling a hunter gets when he finally sees his prey. He activated his personal communicator and sent a message on a frequency that only human military officers knew about. All ships, this is Skyfall Command. The sky remembers. The response came back from dozens of ships scattered across human space. Voices he knew, voices he had served with, voices of men and women who had been waiting just like him. The sky remembers. The sky remembers. The sky remembers. Back on Earth, Dr. Nathan Cross stood in a facility that did not officially exist. It was built inside a hollowed-out asteroid, disguised as a mining operation. For 3 months, he and his team had been working on something that would have been called impossible by every scientist in the galaxy. Final systems check, Nathan called out to his team. Around him, dozens of technicians worked at control panels that looked like nothing any alien had ever seen. The technology was so new that humans barely understood it themselves. Grief engines. Online, reported Dr. Sarah Williams, Nathan's second in command. All quantum resonance fields are stable. Emotional amplification systems ready, added engineer Carl Peterson. We're getting clean readings from all network nodes. Nathan nodded and activated his communication system. Admiral Blake, this is Research Station 7. We are ready for Phase 1. Catherine's voice came back immediately. Understood, Nathan. Begin the awakening. Nathan turned to his team. You all know what we're doing here. For 3 months, we've been building something the galaxy has never seen. Not weapons that destroy things, not shields that protect things. We've built something that shares things, something that connects things, something that makes other people understand what we understand. He paused and looked around the room. Every person there had lost someone on the New Horizon. Sarah's brother had been a teacher on the colony ship. Carl's daughter had been only 8 years old. Nathan himself had lost his best friend from college. Today we show the galaxy what it means to make humans grieve, Nathan said. Today we show them what 50,000 deaths really feels like. Captain, Rebecca Stone commanded the Earthship Vigilance, which was currently docked at a space station near the border of Zephyrian territory. To any alien observer, her ship looked like a simple patrol vessel. It was small, lightly armed, and completely unremarkable. What the aliens could not see were the modifications that had been made to every human ship over the past 3 months. Hidden inside the engine compartments were devices that Nathan Cross called grief engines. They did not make ships go faster or hit harder. They did something much more dangerous. Rebecca received Stephen's message while she was eating dinner in her quarters. When she heard the words, "The sky remembers," she felt something she had not felt since the day the New Horizon died. She felt hope. She activated the ship's internal communication system. All hands, this is the captain. Report to battle stations. This is not a drill. Her crew moved with the smooth efficiency of people who had been waiting for this moment. They had drilled, for it, planned for it, dreamed about it. They all knew what was coming. Engineering report, Rebecca said into her headset. Grief engines are online, Captain, came the reply from Chief Engineer Danny Rodriguez. All connections to the network are stable. We're linked to every human. Installation within 50 light years. Navigation, plot a course for the Zephyrian border. Course plotted and ready, Captain. Communications, open a channel to all human vessels in the area. Channel open, Captain. Rebecca took a deep breath. In a few hours, everything would change. The galaxy thought it knew what humans were like. They thought humans were just another species that could be pushed around and ignored. They were about to learn how wrong they were. All ships, this is Captain Stone of the Vigilance. Operation Skyfall is now active. Remember why we're here. Remember who we lost. Remember that the sky itself is about to become human, and when it does, every alien in the galaxy will understand what 50,000 deaths really means. The responses came back from ships across human space. Not just military vessels, but cargo ships, research stations, even small private craft. Every human in space was part of the network now. Every human was connected to every other human through the grief engines that Nathan Cross had built. We remember, Captain. We remember. We remember. Ambassador Ronald Pierce made his final appearance before the Galactic Council that same day. He walked into the great assembly hall where representatives from 1,000 worlds gathered to make decisions that affected trillions of lives. The hall was enormous, with seats rising up in circles around a central speaking platform. Pierce looked older than he had 3 months ago. His hair was completely gray now, and he walked with a slight limp from an old injury. But his voice was strong when he spoke to the assembled aliens. "Honored representatives," he began, "I come before you today to thank the Galactic Council for its measured response to humanity's recent loss. We appreciate your patience during our time of mourning." The chamber was mostly empty. Only a few dozen representatives had bothered to attend. The rest considered human affairs too unimportant to worry about. "Earth requires no further assistance or intervention from the Council," Pierce continued. "We are handling our grief in our own way, according to our own customs. We ask only that you respect our need for privacy during this difficult time." Quintar, the Altarian representative, nodded approvingly. "The Council is pleased to hear that humanity is processing this tragedy in a healthy manner. Too many species allow grief to consume them." Pierce smiled, but there was something cold about it. "Oh, we're not consumed by our grief, honored representative. We're focused by it. We're united by it. We're powered by it." "I do not understand," Quintar said. "You will," Pierce replied. "Very soon you will understand exactly what human grief looks like." He turned and walked toward the exit, but stopped at the door. "One more thing, honored representatives. In about 6 hours you might want to look up at the sky. Any sky, from any world. It's going to be quite a show." As Pierce left the chamber, he whispered to his aide, Captain Andrew Burke, "Tell Admiral Blake that the sky is ready to fall." Back on Earth, Catherine Blake stood in the war room deep beneath the planet's surface. Banks of monitors showed the positions of every human ship, every human station, every human settlement across the galaxy. Green lights indicated that all systems were ready. All grief engines were online. All connections were stable. The network was complete. For the first time in human history, every member of their species was connected to every other member. They could share thoughts, feelings, memories, and emotions across impossible distances. "Admiral," Colonel Patricia Hayes said from her position at the main control console, "all stations report ready. We have full network connectivity across human space." The day started like any other day across the galaxy. On Zephyr Prime, the capital world of the Zephyrian Empire, Emperor Thexaval was eating his morning meal when the first reports came in. His communications officer, a nervous young Zephyrian named Kexen, burst into the Emperor's private dining chamber. "Your Majesty," Kexen said, his voice shaking, "something is happening to the stars." Thexval looked up from his food with annoyance. He was a large creature, even by Zephyrian standards, with thick armor plating and 4 powerful arms. His black eyes showed no patience for interruptions. "What do you mean something is happening to the stars?" "They're changing, Your Majesty. All of them. Every star visible from our world is starting to pulse with a strange rhythm." Thexval stood up and walked to the large window that looked out over his capital city. The sky was still bright with their sun, but he could see other stars in the distance. And Kexen was right. They were pulsing, not with the random flicker of normal stellar activity, but with a steady, rhythmic beat. It looked like a heartbeat. "Get me the Science Ministry," Thexaval ordered. "I want to know what's causing this." But even as he spoke, something else was happening. The pulsing light was carrying something with it, something that made Thexaval feel strange and uncomfortable. For the first time in his life, the Emperor of the most powerful empire in the galaxy felt afraid. On Earth, Admiral Catherine Blake watched the reports flood in from across human space. The war room was buzzing with activity as officers monitored the network's performance. Every screen showed green lights. Every system was working perfectly. Phase 1 is fully active, Colonel Patricia Hayes announced. All grief engines are broadcasting at maximum efficiency. We're getting responses from every inhabited system in the galaxy. Catherine nodded. Dr. Rodriguez, what are the aliens experiencing? Elena Rodriguez looked up from her instruments, her face pale but determined. Admiral, they're experiencing human death, not just seeing it or hearing about it, they're feeling it. Every alien within range of our broadcast is experiencing the final moments of everyone who died on the New Horizon. All 50,000? All 50,000. Every fear, every hope, every last thought, every parent trying to save their child, every crew member fighting to keep the ship together, every person who died alone in the dark. Catherine felt a grim satisfaction. And how are they handling it? Not well, Admiral. Most alien species have never experienced emotions this intense. They're calling it everything from a natural disaster to an act of war. On the bridge of his flagship in deep space, Zephyrian, Admiral Korthvas was trying to understand what was happening to his crew. The most disciplined soldiers in the galaxy were acting like frightened children. Some were crying, which Zephyrians almost never did. Others were holding each other, seeking comfort from contact that their species normally avoided. Admiral, his second-in-command, Commander Vorthak, said in a voice that shook, I can feel them dying. I can feel the humans dying. Their children were so small and they were so scared. Korthvas felt it too. The sensation of metal tearing apart around him, the cold touch of space, the desperate love of a human mother holding her baby as their ship broke apart. It was not his memory, but somehow he was living it. What kind of weapon is this? He whispered. His answer came from every communication system on the ship. A human voice, calm and clear, spoke in perfect Zephyrian. This is not a weapon, Admiral Korthvas. This is education. My name is Commander Stephen Walsh, of the Earth Defense Ship Retribution. You wanted to see how humans mourn. This is how we grieve. We share it with you, the voice continued, and now it was coming from every ship in the Zephyrian fleet. You destroyed 50,000 human lives. You called it an unfortunate incident. You said they should have followed proper procedures. But you never understood what you had actually done. You never felt what 50,000 deaths really means. Korthvas tried to respond, but his voice would not work. He was experiencing the memory of a human child who had been separated from her parents when the New Horizon's hull cracked open. The child's terror and confusion filled his mind completely. Now you know, Commander Walsh's voice said. Now you understand. This is what you did. This is what 50,000 human deaths feels like. On the Council world of Altair Prime, the Galactic Council was meeting in emergency session. Representatives from hundreds of worlds had gathered to discuss what many were calling the most serious crisis in galactic history. Quintar, the Altarian mediator, stood at the center of the great chamber. His usually calm demeanor was gone. His silver eyes were wide with something that looked like shock. The humans have done something impossible, he announced to the assembled representatives. They have weaponized emotion itself. Every member of every species within 50,000 light years is experiencing the death memories of their lost colonists. The chamber erupted in angry voices. Representatives demanded action, called for military intervention, accused humans of committing psychological warfare on a galactic scale. But not all of the voices were angry. A small Carillion delegate, one of the few species known for their emotional sensitivity, stood up to speak. I felt them die, she said quietly, and the chamber fell silent. I felt every one of them. The teachers who were planning lessons for children on a new world, the farmers who dreamed of growing food under alien suns, the scientists who wanted to study new forms of life. Her voice grew stronger. They were not soldiers. They were not conquerors. They were families. They were dreamers. They were people who wanted nothing more than a chance to live somewhere new. Other voices began to join hers. Representatives from worlds that had remained neutral, that had called the New Horizon incident regrettable but unavoidable, were beginning to speak differently, "The humans are not attacking us," said a delegate from the hegemony worlds. "They are showing us what we ignored. They are making us feel what we chose not to see." Back on Earth, Catherine Blake was preparing for Phase 2. The first phase had been about sharing human grief. The second phase would be about sharing human anger. "All stations prepare for Phase 2 activation," she announced across the human network. "Dr. Cross, are the anger amplifiers ready?" Nathan Cross's voice came back from his hidden research station. "Ready, Admiral. But I should warn you, the emotional intensity is going to be much higher. The aliens barely handled our grief. Our rage might be too much for them." "That's their problem," Catherine said coldly. "They chose to murder 50,000 innocent people. Now they get to experience what that really means to us." She paused, thinking about the reports coming in from across the galaxy. Alien governments were in chaos. Some were demanding war against humanity. Others were calling for peace negotiations. A few were actually apologizing for their role in the New Horizons' destruction. "Phase 2 will be different," Catherine continued. "Phase 1 showed them our sorrow. Phase 2 will show them our fury. But Phase 3 will show them something else entirely." "What's Phase 3, Admiral?" Colonel Hayes asked. Catherine smiled, but it was not a happy expression. "Phase 3 is where we show them what humans do with our grief and anger. Phase 3 is where we show them how we turn our pain into something constructive." She looked around the war room at the faces of her officers. Every one of them had been changed by the loss of the New Horizon. Every one of them had spent 3 months preparing for this moment. But first, they need to understand that human grief does not end with tears. It ends with action. It ends with change. It ends with making sure that what happened to our people never happens to anyone else. Catherine reached for the Phase 2 activation switch. "All ships, all stations, all humans everywhere. Remember why we're here. Remember what they took from us. Remember that we are not just mourning. We are teaching." Across the galaxy, humans felt the connection strengthen. The network that had started as a way to share their grief was becoming something more. It was becoming a way to share their purpose, their determination, their absolute refusal to let the deaths of 50,000 people be meaningless. "Phase 2 begins now," Catherine announced. "Show them what human anger looks like." The stars began to pulse faster, and the rhythm changed, from the steady beat of a heart to something more urgent, more demanding. The aliens who had barely survived the first wave of human grief were about to experience something much more intense. They were about to learn what it meant to make the human race truly angry. And somewhere in the depths of space, the wreckage of the New Horizon continued its slow drift into the dark, carrying with it the dreams of 50,000 people who would never be forgotten. The galaxy shook under the weight of human fury. What had started as overwhelming sadness now became something much more dangerous. Across thousands of worlds, aliens who had barely survived the first wave of human grief found themselves drowning in an ocean of rage that belonged to an entire species. On Zephyr Prime, Emperor Thexaval collapsed in his throne room. The anger flooding through his mind was not his own, but it felt real enough to make his heart's race and his breathing become difficult. He could feel the fury of every human parent who had lost a child on the New Horizon. He could feel the rage of every human who had watched their dreams die in the cold darkness of space. "Make it stop," he gasped to his advisors, but they were in no condition to help him. The entire Zephyrian government was experiencing the same overwhelming emotions. Ministers who had voted to destroy the human colony ship were now feeling exactly what that decision had cost. But the humans were experiencing something completely different. Flight Lieutenant Christina Moore sat in her monitoring station near Centauri Space and felt more connected to her fellow humans than ever before. The grief engines were not just broadcasting to aliens. They were linking every human consciousness together. For the first time in the history of their species, humans could feel each other's thoughts and emotions directly. Christina felt the determination of pilots she had never met. She shared the memories of colonists on distant worlds. She carried the hopes and dreams of billions of people who were all united by one simple goal: making sure that what happened to the New Horizon never happened again. "All stations, this is Network Control," came a voice that Christina recognized as Admiral Blake's. But the voice was not coming through her communication system. It was coming through her mind, through the emotional connection that now linked every human in the galaxy. Phase 2 is in full effect. Alien governments across the galaxy are experiencing the full weight of human anger. Some are calling for war against us. Others are begging for mercy. But we are not finished with our lesson. Admiral Korthvas commanded the largest military fleet in known space, but his 200 warships felt small and helpless against what the humans were doing to them. His crew was not just experiencing human emotions, they were being changed by them. Zephyrians were naturally aggressive and warlike. They solved problems with violence and saw mercy as weakness, but now they were feeling the love that human parents had for their children. They were experiencing the hope that human colonists had carried with them to the stars. They were understanding for the first time what it meant to care about someone more than yourself. "Admiral," Commander Vorthak said, his voice completely different from the cold military tone he usually used. "I think I understand now. The humans on that ship, they were not enemies. They were not threats. They were just people who wanted to live." Korthvas nodded slowly. The anger he was feeling from the human network was terrible, but underneath it was something else. Something that his species had never really understood. It was love. The humans were not just angry because 50,000 people had died. They were angry because 50,000 people they loved had died. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "we're receiving a transmission from the human fleet." "Put it through." The main screen showed a human face that Korthvas had never seen before. The man was young, with brown hair and calm eyes that seemed to burn with inner fire. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of every human in the galaxy. "Admiral Korthvas, my name is Captain Daniel Foster of the Earth Defense Ship Nemesis. We need to talk." Korthvas tried to respond, but Foster continued before he could speak. "Your fleet is the most powerful military force in known space. You have weapons that can destroy planets and shields that can stop anything we might throw at you. Under normal circumstances, we would have no chance against you." Foster smiled, but it was not a pleasant expression. "But these are not normal circumstances. You see, Admiral, we are not fighting you with ships or weapons. We are fighting you with something much more dangerous. We are fighting you with the truth." The human captain gestured, and the screen showed images of the new horizon before its destruction. Families walking through the ship's corridors, children playing in recreation areas, scientists working in laboratories, teachers preparing lessons for students who would never grow up. "Every person you are feeling die right now was real," Foster said. "Every fear, every hope, every moment of terror and love and desperate courage. You made those people die, and now you get to experience what that actually means." Korthvas felt tears running down his face, something that Zephyrians almost never did. "What do you want from us?" "We want you to understand," Foster replied. "We want you to feel what 50,000 deaths really costs. We want you to know that when you kill humans, you are not just destroying bodies. You are destroying dreams, relationships, futures, love itself." On Earth, Admiral Catherine Blake was preparing for the most dangerous part of her plan. Phase 3 would not just share human emotions with the galaxy. It would change how those emotions worked. "Dr. Rodriguez," she said to the xenopsychologist, "are you ready to begin the transformation phase?" Elena Rodriguez looked nervous. "Admiral, what we are about to do has never been attempted before. We are going to fundamentally change how sentient minds work. We could accidentally damage every intelligent species in the galaxy. Or we could save them," Catherine replied. "Dr. Cross, status report on the empathy engines." Nathan Cross's voice came through the communication system from his hidden research station. "All empathy amplifiers are online, Admiral. The network is ready to begin broadcasting permanent emotional connections. But I have to warn you, once we start this process, we cannot stop it. Every sentient being in range will be permanently connected to every other sentient being." Catherine nodded. "That's the point, Nathan. The reason this happened to the New Horizon is because aliens cannot understand what their actions really cost. They cannot feel the pain they cause to others. We are going to fix that problem. She turned to address the entire human network, her words reaching every human consciousness in the galaxy. My fellow humans, what we are about to do will change everything. We are not just sharing our grief and anger anymore. We are sharing our capacity for empathy itself. We are going to make it impossible for any species to harm another without feeling the consequences directly. The response came back from billions of human minds, all speaking with one voice. Do it, Catherine. Activated Phase 3, and the grief engines began broadcasting on frequencies that had never been used before. The emotional connections that had started with humans began reaching out to touch other minds, other species, other ways of thinking. On worlds across the galaxy, something unprecedented began to happen. Aliens who had spent their entire lives thinking only about their own species began to feel the emotions of others. Zephyrians felt the gentle curiosity of Altarian scientists. Aggressive warrior races experienced the peaceful meditation of monk-like species. For the first time in galactic history, different species began to truly understand each other. Emperor Thexaval felt the change happening in his own mind. The brutal efficiency that had made him a successful ruler was still there, but now it was tempered by something else. He could feel the fear of the species his empire had conquered. He could understand the pain his decisions had caused. By the void, he whispered, "What have we done? What have I done?" His advisor, Kexan, was experiencing the same transformation. Your Majesty, I can feel them. All of them. Every species we have hurt. Every world we have conquered. They were not just obstacles to our expansion. They were people. They had families and dreams and hopes just like we do. Across the galaxy, the same realization was happening on millions of worlds. Species that had been enemies for thousands of years suddenly understood each other's motivations. Governments that had built their power on the suffering of others found themselves unable to ignore the cost of their actions. Captain Foster's voice reached every ship in Admiral Korthvas's fleet. This is what we wanted you to learn, Admiral. This is what human grief really looks like. We do not just mourn our dead. We make sure their deaths have meaning. We make sure that the universe becomes a better place because they lived. Korthvas looked around his bridge at crew members who were crying, hugging each other, expressing emotions that Zephyrians had never shown before. His fleet, the most feared military force in the galaxy, had been transformed into something else, entirely. Captain Foster, he said slowly, what happens now? Now, Foster replied, we build something new. We build a galaxy where what happened to the New Horizon can never happen again. We build a universe where every species can feel the pain they cause to others, where empathy is not a weakness but a strength. The human captain's image smiled, and this time it was warm and genuine. Welcome to the new age, Admiral. Welcome to a galaxy that can finally feel. Catherine Blake watched the reports coming in from across human space. Alien governments were collapsing and reforming. Enemies were becoming allies. Species that had never communicated before were reaching out to each other with new understanding. 6 months after the sky turned human, the galaxy was a different place. The great assembly hall of the Galactic Council looked nothing like it had before. Where alien delegates once sat separated by species, now they mixed together freely. Zephyrians worked alongside Altarians. Former enemies shared meals and discussed problems that affected everyone. At the center of the hall, 2 figures stood together before the assembled representatives. Admiral Catherine Blake wore her Earth Defense uniform, but she no longer looked like a military officer preparing for war. Next to her stood someone who would have been impossible to imagine in this place 6 months ago. Thex stood where Emperor Thexaval had once ruled with brutal efficiency. He was still large and imposing, but everything else about him had changed. His black eyes, once cold and calculating, now showed warmth and understanding. He no longer called himself Emperor. He was simply Thex, a person trying to make up for the terrible things he had done. Honored representatives, Thex began, his grinding voice somehow gentler than before. 6 months ago, my empire destroyed a human colony ship. We killed 50,000 innocent people because they were in the wrong place at the wrong time. We called it an unfortunate incident and expected the galaxy to move on. He paused, and Catherine could feel the genuine remorse flowing from his mind through the empathy network that now connected every sentient being in this part of space. We were wrong, Thex continued. Not just about the law or about territory or about procedures. We were wrong about what life itself means. The humans did not defeat my empire through superior weapons or military strategy. They taught us what we had destroyed. They showed us what 50,000 deaths really costs. A delegate from the Carillion world stood up. Her name was Scylla, and she was one of the few species that had always understood emotions deeply. But even she had been changed by the human network. The humans gave us something we never had before, Scylla said, her small voice carrying clearly through the hall. They gave us the ability to truly understand each other. When I speak now, you do, not just hear my words. You feel what those words mean to me. You understand why they matter. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the assembly. Representatives who had spent decades arguing about trade disputes and territorial boundaries now found themselves working together on problems that affected everyone. It was impossible to fight over resources when you could feel how much those resources meant to the people who needed them. Catherine stepped forward to address the council. 6 months ago, you thought you knew what human grief looked like. You expected us to mourn quietly, and then forget. You were wrong about that, but you were also wrong about something else. You thought our grief would make us weak. She gestured to the mixed crowd of aliens around her. Instead, our grief made us strong enough to change the entire galaxy, strong enough to turn our enemies into friends, strong enough to make sure that what happened to the New Horizon never happens to anyone else. In the space above the Council world, a fleet unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen moved through the stars. Captain Daniel Foster still commanded the Earthship Nemesis, but now it flew alongside ships from a dozen different species. His bridge crew included humans, Zephyrians, Altarians, and others working together as if they had been teammates their entire lives. Captain, reported his new second-in-command, a former Zephyrian warrior named Vorthak, we're approaching the memorial site. Daniel nodded. All ships, reduce speed. We're here to remember, not to hurry. Through the view screen, he could see the place where the New Horizon had died. But it no longer looked like a debris field. Over the past 6 months, beings from across the galaxy had come here to build something beautiful. A monument made of crystal and metal and light that honored not just the 50,000 humans who had died, but everyone who had ever lost their life to senseless violence. Sir, reported his communications officer, a young human woman named Lisa Park. We're receiving messages from ships throughout the system. Representatives from 47 different species have come for the dedication ceremony. Daniel smiled. Put me through to all vessels. This is Captain Foster to all ships in the Memorial Fleet. 6 months ago, 50,000 humans died in this place because the galaxy could not understand what their lives were worth. Today, we dedicate this monument not just to them, but to the new understanding they made possible. On the bridge of his flagship, Admiral Korthvas listened to Daniel's words and felt the same mixture of sorrow and hope that every other being in the fleet was experiencing. His massive military force had become something completely different. Instead of conquering worlds, they now protected them. Instead of enforcing the will of the strong, they helped the weak. Admiral, his aide reported, the Earthship Retribution is requesting permission to begin the ceremony. Permission granted, Korthvas replied. And Lieutenant, send a message to Commander Walsh. Tell him that the Zephyrian fleet is honored to serve alongside him. On Earth, Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood in what had once been called the War Room, but was now known as the Empathy Center. Banks of monitors showed the emotional state of beings across the galaxy. What she saw would have been impossible to imagine before the network was created. Conflict was not gone entirely, but it was different now. When disagreements arose, they were settled through understanding rather than force. When one species had problems, Others immediately offered help because they could feel the suffering directly. "Admiral Blake," Elena reported, "we're getting readings from the far edge of the network. New species are making contact almost daily. Word is spreading about what we've accomplished here." Catherine nodded as she watched the memorial ceremony through her screens. The monument was beautiful, but what made her proud was seeing former enemies working together to honor the dead. Zephyrian engineers worked alongside human designers. Altarian artists collaborated with Carillion musicians to create something that spoke to every species. "Dr. Cross," Catherine called to her chief scientist, "how stable is the network at this distance?" Nathan's voice came back from his research station, which was no longer hidden but had become the galaxy's center for empathy research. "More stable than we ever hoped, Admiral. The network is self-sustaining now. It grows stronger every time a new species joins it." He paused, and Catherine could feel his amazement through their connection. "Admiral, we've created something that will outlast us all. Long after we're gone, the galaxy will remember what we taught them. They will remember that every life has value, that every death has meaning, that every being deserves understanding." The memorial fleet, the ceremony was reaching its climax. Representatives from each species came forward to add something to the monument. The Zephyrians contributed metal forged from their homeworld. The Altarians added crystals that would sing with the voices of the dead. Humans placed a data core containing the names, faces, and dreams of everyone who had died on the New Horizon. But the most moving moment came when a group of children from different species approached the monument together. A human girl named Amy Roberts held hands with a young Zephyrian named Kexathar and an Altarian child called Quinsol. They had grown up in the new galaxy, where understanding between species was as natural as breathing. "We promise to remember," Amy said. Her words carried across the fleet by the empathy network so that every being could feel the sincerity behind them. "We promise that what happened here will never happen again." The children released a cloud of glowing particles that had been programmed to spread throughout the galaxy. Each particle carried the story of the New Horizon, ensuring that the lesson would reach every world, every species, every generation that came after. Catherine watched the ceremony and felt something she had not experienced since the day the New Horizon died. She felt peace, not the peace of forgetting, but the peace of knowing that their sacrifice had meaning. "Colonel Hayes," she said to her aide, "send a message to every human ship, every human colony, every human family in the galaxy." "What should the message say, Admiral?" Catherine looked up at the stars, which still pulsed gently with the rhythm of human hearts. But now they pulsed for everyone. "Tell them that the 50,000 did not die in vain. Tell them that their deaths changed everything. Tell them that the sky is no longer just human." She paused, watching as ships from dozens of species worked together in perfect harmony. "Tell them that the sky has become something better. It has become humane. And that makes all the difference." In the years that followed, the galaxy continued to grow and change. New species joined the empathy network, each bringing their own understanding of what it meant to live and feel and care for others. The monument to the New Horizon became a place of pilgrimage, where beings from across space came to remember and to promise that such senseless death would never happen again. And in the depths of space, where 50,000 dreams had once died, in darkness light now shone eternal. Not just the light of stars, but the light of understanding, of empathy, of a galaxy that had finally learned to feel. The sky had turned human, and in doing so, it had turned everything toward hope.